There are a lot of weapons in Fallout 4. Some people prefer guns, some prefer energy weapons. I prefer melee weapons, so I can watch the light my enemy's eyes die as I stab them through the heart. Which brings us to today. Can you beat Fallout 4 with only melee weapons? After creating my character and considering chugging a bottle of whiskey at 10 a.m., the Vault Tech rep arrived and I set my special stats. Honestly, this should be pretty obvious. High strength and endurance for health and damage, 5 luck for idiot savant, and the rest of the points spread out pretty evenly across the board. The man inside my TV told me New York was destroyed, and after a brief celebration, me and my wife abandoned Codsworth and ran for the vault. After Nan fell down the stairs with the force of a nuclear blast, we descended underground and climbed into the freezer to join the Cornettos and Forgotten Jubblies. Nora caught a bullet to the head for not giving up the last Greg's sausage roll when politely asked to. I escaped the icebox, snagged a wedding ring, and got to work. The security baton was a useful tool when it came to beating puppy-sized roaches to death. Even the hallway full of roaches stood no chance against my beating stick. I escaped the vault, ready to unleash my wrath upon the Commonwealth and its people. Upon finally entering Sanctuary, I spoke with Codsworth, boosted my strength, and fought off some blowflies. After robbing my now dead neighbor's basement, I met Dogmeat at Red Rocket Truck Stop, found a new toy in a house in Concord, and took the fight to the Raiders. Honestly, the bat isn't that bad. It's a pretty good early game melee weapon for low level enemies, especially when you have Dogmeat to help you. After grabbing the fusion core in the museum basement, me and Dogmeat were effortlessly able to clear out the raiders in the upper floors, causing a ruckus. I had a brief chat with Preston before claiming my prize on the roof in the form of a suit of power armor. The Deathclaw fight was pretty uneventful, especially with raiders distracting it while I gave it the Negan treatment. A raider ended up stealing the final kill, so I took his teeth out as punishment for his crimes. I wrapped my bat in chains, ended a standoff the only way I know how, and bought General Chow's revenge. Little did I know at the time, this would proceed to be my main weapon for the remainder of this run. This guy went all Fallout 3 on me as I approached Cambridge. My OBS realized I was recording a Fallout game, and threw a hissy fit, absolutely killing my FPS. After letting the Brotherhood clear out the ghouls, I spoke with Buzz Lightyear before running around and marking some locations that would be important later in the game. My OBS had another episode while I fought raiders on a boat with my new sword. I dread what would have happened if I tried to show it Pirates of the Caribbean. I fought the Hulk's extended family closer to Diamond City. I also killed a guard and stole his skin, as it was far more durable than the outfit I was wearing at the time. I smacked Piper in the head with my toothpick, bartered with the local shopkeep for goods and/or services, overheard a conversation between two of the locals about a faction somewhere out there that worships Thomas the Tank Engine. I spoke with Ellie about rescuing Nick Valentine, the best character in the entirety of this game, employed my conflict resolution skills on the way out of Diamond City. I fought some wild dogs in a junkyard outside the wall, and got myself a pretty useless armor piece in return. My OBS started dying again for some reason upon entering the Boston Public Library. I gave Dogmeat some new clothes because he's a good boy and he deserves them, before deciding to fight Swan with what is essentially a rusty old butter knife. This actually wasn't too bad. All it took was sticking myself with a bunch of old needles and huffing Brahmin farts to finally take down the big green monster. Down in Park Street Station, the tunnel rats put up little to no resistance. They all pretty much just wore suits, which doesn't exactly offer the best protection against a maniac swinging a sword around like he's trying to skewer them for the local kebab shop. Even the triggermen further into the station stood no chance against me as I hacked and slashed my way through anything that moved. Those in the vault were barely any more difficult as I used their bodies as a canvas. And what did I paint on that canvas? Psychosis. Beat Dino's ribs so hard into his spine, he flew into a corner, did the same to another triggerman not even 5 seconds later, and bonked a mob boss on the head with a sword. I spoke with Inspector Gadget once we escaped the vault, before heading to Charles View Amphitheatre to rid the world of a cult. They were worshipping something other than me, and I couldn't stand for that. I burned their bodies on a giant fire so that people passing by would know that I just murdered a building full of innocent civilians. I also stole all of their belongings because dead people don't have a use for money or golden pocket watches. I arrived at Good Neighbor, sold a bunch of stuff I didn't need to another robot, and bought new shin bones from a walking corpse in an effort to traverse the Commonwealth just a little bit quicker. I fast traveled to Diamond City to contradict myself, gave a bottle of Nuka-Cola to a local homeless man before condemning him to listen to Preston Garvey for the rest of his days. I got my reward from Ellie for saving her boss, sat down with Nick to do the interview, rode the elevator up to the mayor's office, and stole Kellogg's key from his assistant's desk. Me and Nick broke into Kellogg's house. I shoved a candlestick deep up Dogmeat's sniffer and began to follow him all the way to Fort Hagen. I fought my way through everything that stood between me and the fort. Everything from groups of mole rats jumping us to hordes of vicious dogs, all the way to Yogi Bear himself. That last one was a bitch and a half to kill. Then something bad happened. My recording died. I have no idea why, but the next thing in my recording is me in Fort Hagen surrounded by dead synths. Fortunately, the missing footage wasn't too interesting anyway. Fighting through the synths deeper into Fort Hagen reminded me why I hate melee combat in Fallout 4. Being able to block all incoming damage with only a single button press is stupid. It should do reduced damage, or else you and the NPC you're fighting both just end up getting stun-locked. I suppose I shouldn't complain though. As long as they had ranged weapons, they were easy to kill. Even the higher level patrollers went down in only a couple of swings. I was taking no chances for Kellogg. I ran him down and beat him to death before he even knew what day it was. The Brotherhood arrived in the Commonwealth. I spoke with Nick and Piper in Diamond City about the next step of the plan, before returning to Good Neighbor for the most boring part of this entire game, the Memory Den segment. This part of the game is so boring after the first time you do it. I went to make food instead of watching it, because I'd genuinely rather do a shot of bleach than listen to these people talk for what might honestly be the 100th time in my life. I made sure to grab Nick before leaving, and hit a raider so hard that his mortal body chased his spirit into the afterlife. I took a wrong turn somewhere, and accidentally ended up in super mutant territory, visited a giant teddy bear, and fought an old woman who was rude to me. I couldn't stand for that. She's dead now, just as all those who disrespect me will end up. I fought more super mutants closer to the glowing sea with help from a vertibird. Then, for some reason, and I still have no idea why, I decided to clear out an Enclave camp with only a sword. As you can probably imagine, this was a stupid idea. I spent almost an hour of my life inside this goddamn building for what was essentially no reason. No enemies in this building were worth the time nor the effort it took to kill them. I killed the colonel so quick I didn't even notice it happened, ended the lockdown, and ascended to the roof where I almost immediately got my ass handed to me by an Enclave soldier with a Tesla cannon. I knew the second I saw him descend from the skies that my life was about to be ripped away from me by a lightning being forced into my body. The second time around, I was taking no chances. I stuck a needle in my arm, puffed some funky gas, and ripped that fucking throat out. I did some hardcore parkour to get to a soldier with the Tesla cannon, nearly cried upon almost reliving my death, ran into the sweet embrace of Chems, and buried my sword deep inside his ribcage. I managed to pull off an Assassin's Creed-looking kill when I dove headfirst off the building and beat a Hellfire trooper to death with a butter knife, before getting up close and personal with the second pyromaniac. A vertibird full of enemies remained out of reach, and I sure as hell wasn't waiting for an hour for Nick to shoot it down with his little pea shooter. After some time thinking, I eventually ran like hell, which worked surprisingly well, and I arrived at the crater of Atom. I spoke with the old radiation-worshipping lunatic and got the location of Virgil's cave. I told Shrek that I killed Lord Farquaad, and I wanted access to Duloc, so he told me to go hunt down a Corsair. I fast-travelled from Virgil's cave to Green Tech Genetics because I wasn't about to walk through the glowing sea again. The gunners inside the building were so unbelievably easy to kill, I managed to zone out as I ran through the building until I reached the final fight with the Corsair. This was extremely obvious, especially after I tanked a missile without taking any damage. For the Corsair fight, I just went with Old Faithful. One part psycho, one part sword, and one part hacking and slashing until the screaming stopped, just like Grandpa Pete back in his butcher days. After heading to Old North Church and solving the easiest puzzle known to mankind, I stared down all 6 barrels of a minigun, got the chip decoded by Tinker Tom, and then made the worst decision of this run. I decided that I'd join the Toaster Liberation Squad, for absolutely no reason other than I haven't done a railroad playthrough in like a year. I met with Deacon under a bridge near Lexington, spoke with Bootleg Javier on the overpass near the switchboard, entered the base through the back door, because choice is an illusion, and fought my way through the switchboard. The synths mostly have ranged weapons, so they're easy enough to take care of. I grabbed the prototype, got something useless, and returned to the Old North Church to officially join the railroad. This is where I really fucked up. I proceed to spend the next 6 real hours of my life doing nothing but railroad side quests. There was absolutely no point to this, and was a complete waste of my time. So bad to the point that I'm cutting it all out because literally nothing interesting or important to the video happened during that time. After the ADHD wore off, I remembered to return to the Jolly Green Giant. He told me to build a signal interceptor, so I did, and managed to email myself inside the Institute. I traumatized a kid, and resisted the urge to execute an old man on sight before meeting the railroad informant, along with his pet synth. I spoke with Dr. Lee so I could fast travel, and returned to Railroad HQ for the next step of the plan. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like the railroad, so let's speedrun this shit. Got a password from a terminal, gave a report to Desdemona at Railroad HQ, spoke with Z1 in the Institute, gave the password to Liam, returned to HQ again to speak to Des, spoke with Z1 about a possible rebellion, and proceeded to execute said rebellion with ruthless efficiency, by the destruction of some Gen 2 synths that were guarding a bunch of Gen 3 worker synths. I spoke to Z1 before continuing to work undercover for the railroad, which basically translates to do the Institute ending until a certain point, so let's get going. I helped the Corsair reclaim a synth at Libertalia, warned the railroad about Bunker Hill, killed another Corsair to help save some synths, spoke with Father on the roof of the CIT ruins, sat through the Fallout equivalent of the Peace Council from Skyrim, got told that my son is dying of cancer, and arrived at Mass Fusion, where my OBS almost immediately killed itself. I grabbed the strength bobblehead before descending into the basement, where me and Nick proceeded to absolutely annihilate a pair of Assaultrons, so they couldn't jump us later during a fight with a sentry bot. I snagged the beryllium agitator, loaded up on any chems I considered useful, and proceeded to easily beat the sentry bot to death with only 3 swings from my rusty old sword. I gave the beryllium agitator to Ali. I interrogated a man for the secrets behind McDonald's Szechuan sauce, broadcast a speech to the entire Commonwealth, activated the Institute's nuclear reactor, somehow managed to sit through a second meeting that day, spoke with Z1 about the Brotherhood discovering the Railroad HQ, warned Desdemona about the incoming Brotherhood attack, and fought off the Brotherhood. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this was definitely the hardest fight so far. The sheer amount of enemies in power armor with heavy weapons nearly overwhelmed me multiple times, but eventually I was able to brute force through them with what is essentially just a fancy toothpick. It's time for Operation Red Glare, which involves an assault on Cambridge Police Station to steal a Brotherhood vertibird. While wondering how to take out a vertibird, Nick took it upon himself to cast lightning bolts on the damn thing. No idea where he got a Tesla cannon, but I'm not complaining. We climbed onto a vertibird and flew it all the way up to the Pridwin to plant some bombs. I could have used a disguise, but decided to go the Zorro way, of death by blade for all those who stood in my way. Inside the Pridwin, I planted the explosives on the 3 gas bag valves and managed to kill the Brotherhood leader with a single swing. I escaped to the vertibird, and as we flew away, the Pridwin became the Hindenburg. I spoke with Des at HQ for the final attack on the Institute, killed everything that moved in the Institute teleporter room, teleported the remainder of the railroad into the Institute, and we pushed our way through the synths. This wasn't that bad, other than me being reminded why I hate melee combat in this game. Seriously, this needs to be fixed in Fallout 5. I killed a fake monkey for daring to impersonate Harambe, lied to my son by telling him his people would live, killed Ronald McDonald, somehow managed to kill a legendary synth in only 2 swings, planted the bomb on the reactor, told the fake kid he could come with me because I was in a good mood that day for some reason, pressed the big green button, blew up the Institute, and managed to beat Fallout 4 with only melee weapons.